Well, hello, Kitty. Look who's here. All our fans are out there. So we got a plastic bag down here, and here's my RR139 elephant toenail and white smooth bone. And what I plan on doing is I'm going to attempt to dye this white smooth bone a different color. And what I'll be using for that is Rit Dye, specifically cherry red. It says it's good for cotton, wool, nylon, plus more. I'm hoping the plus more includes white smooth bone. We shall see. Several people have done this and said it works really great. I'm not doing it exactly the way they say they do it because I don't need to possibly stain one of my pots. I don't need somebody else yelling at me because why is there's a red ring in the pot that we use all the time? So, and I don't have an old pot to use, so I'm gonna try it a different way. What I have is this little fresh buttery taste spread from Land O'Lakes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a bunch of Rit Dye in the bottom of it, add some boiling water, and then I will submerge the white smooth bone knife into it and let it sit there until the water cools all the way down. So probably about an hour and a half of the knife just sitting in the Rit Dye. Then I will dump the Rit Dye down the slop sink instead of the toilet or kitchen sink, and that way I don't have to worry about anything else getting dyed red also. And then after that I'm going to take the knife out and then basically let it sit for 24 hours while the Rit Dye absorbs into the bone and hopefully dries that way, and then we'll go to step 2. Okay, so we got about 3.5 ounces of the cherry red Rit Dye in the container, and now we'll slowly pour in some boiling water. I'm going to pour in enough to get it up above the height of the knife. And we will stir this up a bit. Ooh. That's why I put the plastic bag down. I don't want to spill this anywhere. I really do not want red burlap for a new background color. But there we go. All right, I'm going to suppose that that is sufficiently stirred. And well, let's get her in there. I'm just gonna slowly drop it. There. All right. We could just sit here for the next hour and a half and me film it, but that would make for a very, very long video. So what we're going to do now is come back in an hour and a half and go on to the next step. Okay, we have reached that critical point where I find out if my rubber gloves have holes in them or not, as I take the elephant toenail out of the dye. And I don't know if that worked or not. I would say it did not work. Not to any significant amount. No, that's, let me wipe it off here without getting it everywhere. So that's where we're at now. It's catching a little bit on the back, but not much. All right, I'm going to try something else. I'm not going to dump this out yet. Okay, so my thought is there might be a coating or something on the bone because it is kind of shiny. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some 600 grit sandpaper and I'm going to sand the bone and try again. I think that might help. Maybe I need to open the pores up on the bone because it does seem to be grabbing it on the sides, but just not on the big slabs. So that's what I'm going to try and do. Little 600 grit. Not trying too hard. Trying not to hit the bolsters, as you can tell. Don't care if I get it all the way to the edges. I just want to get it a little more red than what we got now. So we'll see what that happens, and then I will repeat the process with the boiling water, and I will use the remainder of the Rit dye that I have. So there'll be a lot more dye in it, and well, we'll see what happens. Can't hurt to try. If not, I'm going to do the other thing and just antique the bone by putting it in some very strong tea. That works better. I can at least get something like a brownish bone out of it then. But so far, I've not been impressed with the Rit dye. We'll see what happens with this second attempt at dyeing it. Hang on, we'll be back. Okay, well, I assumed because it did not stain the knife, the nickel silver bolsters or anything else, it won't stain the pot. So I'm going to try boiling it on the stove for a little bit. Hopefully it will not screw up the back spring or anything like that. I don't know how it's going to work. And by the way, what we have there is basically the entire bottle of Rit dye plus a little bit of water. Okay, it's simmering now. I'm going to let it do that for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to remove it from heat. Okay, it's about ready to come off the stove. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer it downstairs, put it back in this container, dye and everything, and let it cool to room temperature. And after I've done that, I will take it back out of everything and see if it's any different. Okay, we are back again, and somewhere in this mess is a knife. I'm going to get it out of there and we'll see if it's any redder than it was before. Well, it looks redder now, but let's see. Once and this stuff is much thicker because, like I said, I used the entire bottle, and I sanded it first. Let's wipe off the excess and see what it looks like. Well, it's looking prettier than it did before. Definitely redder. But the proof is going to actually be in the pudding. Now, what I'm going to do actually is I got the excess off. You notice it's darker on a couple spots in the back, and which is the case. I know it's not going to go smooth, but it is definitely a red bone now, not a semi or sort of red. And what I will do is I'm going to quickly rinse it and see if it changes. I'm going to quickly rinse it because I want to get all the dye out of the inside and everything. So I will be right back and we'll see what it looks like. And after I've done that, I'm actually going to let this sit overnight and let the dye go in there a little bit better. You know what I mean? I'm just going to let it sit outside the dye, this dye, and let it absorb into the bone and dry. And once it's done that, then I'm going to put it in some cold water and try and leach out any dye that can leach out. We'll see how that works. Okay, so here's the knife again. I've dried it off, rinsed it out and everything, and opened up the blades. And one thing I noticed, if you notice right there, that is actually a newfound nick in the blade. And I am thinking that might have happened from blade vibration while this knife was boiling away for 5 minutes. So that is definitely a nick. It is not like discoloration from the dye or anything. And so I'm going to have to file that out or strop it out basically. It's not a big deal, but it is an interesting thing that happens. So it seems to me that if you are going to be doing the dyeing, you are definitely going to need to make sure all the blades are open, because you might have issues with blades chipping and stuff with the blades closed up. So one other thing, I guess it's one of those you live you learn kind of things. But so far it's looking pretty good. Like I said, I'm going to let this sit now overnight so that the red dye on the surface, if it's just surface, then it's not going to really absorb into the bone. If it isn't, if it actually did take and absorb into the bone, once I let it sit overnight, I can put it in some cold water and see how much of the dye actually leaches back out, and that's what I'll do tomorrow. In any case, for right now, we're going to set the knife aside and not fret too much over a little nick on the blade there. Well, I stupidly dumped out the first glass of water I used when I was leaching the bone, but this is the second glass of water that I put the bone knife in. Remember, it was dyed with cherry red Rit Dye, and it was probably darker yesterday than it is today. But if you can tell here, the water in this glass is definitely pink. Did not start out pink, but it has definitely turned a nice little bit of pink. The first glass was even pinker. And as you can tell from me rubbing on the paper here, you also see red dye coming off in the paper as I dry it. Now this is just cold water that is being used to leach the red dye back out of the bone. And the reason I'm doing that is, well, people sweat. And if you sweat, you'll also get red dye all in your hand. So as far as I can tell, the Rit Dye will stain the bone, but you're going to need to leach it back out of there. And I think I'm going to be leaching this probably a couple more times to get as much of the red dye or the loose red dye out of it. And so instead of having a red smooth bone knife, more likely what I'm going to have is a pink smooth bone knife. This is definitely turning pink. It would have been nice if it would have been that nice dark cherry red like you see here. But as you can tell, results are going to vary. You got a lighter red here, and that's just how the bone ends up taking the color. People were wondering about splotching and everything else. Well, yeah, it does splotch. But I guess I'm still happy with it, but I'm telling you also that my next attempt at dyeing is probably going to use a type of leather dye instead of Rit Dye. And I'm also warning you that if you're not taking, if you have decided to dye your knives using Rit Dye, make sure afterwards that you soak it in cold water for a while. Let it dry for overnight, and then start soaking it in cold water to leach out all the excess dye that really did not take. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the more you use that knife, the more your hand is going to get covered in the dye. And I'll tell you right now, sweaty hands are going to leach out more dye than just plain old cold water. So that's something else to think about. Oh, by the way, if you remember, there was that nasty nick in the blade. Well, it's a lot better. You can still see it a little bit there. But I have basically hit it with a whetstone a couple times, and I managed to get most of that nasty nick gone. It will cut through the paper now without snagging up too badly, so I'm not too concerned with what's left. But a couple more times on a fine whetstone, and the blade should be fine with that nasty nick that was there. Otherwise, the knife is working fine. Notice it definitely has a little travel still. So all in all, I guess I'm happy, but it's definitely going to be a pink elephant toenail instead of a red elephant toenail. And well, you know what? Drink a little rum and then you see pink elephants anyway. So I guess it'll be all right. So just to sum it up, here's my 3 RR139 elephant toenails in white smooth bone, and now none of them are the same. This is the original, and I will just keep one in white smooth bone. I like it. Always have liked white smooth bone and just plain, so I'm cool with that. But I'm also really happy and a little proud of myself for my efforts in scrimshawing on this white smooth bone knife, putting an elephant's face on an elephant toenail. I know it's a fairly simple design, but I kind of like simple line art, and I don't know, it looks a little primitive, and I'm very happy with it. And I will definitely try my luck at doing some other scrimshaw work in the future because, well, I'm happy with it, and got a nice little elephant face on my elephant toenail, so that's pretty cool. As for the cherry red Rit Dye, well, as you can see, it is much more of a faded red or a pinkish color. I was expecting that would happen, but I learned quite a bit doing this. Number one, if you're going to boil your knife, make sure the blades are open so that they don't chip on anything, because if they got a shallow space down there, this blade is going to vibrate, and it could very well chip against the back spring. So I think that's what happened with it. Well, it was unfortunate, but I managed to work it out most of the way. And as you can see, the cherry red definitely leached out with the cold water. It is a little blotchy and everything, but I'm still kind of happy with the way it looks. And actually, I'm happy enough with it that I'm thinking about getting some black Rit dye and dyeing one of these elephant toenails black, because when it leaches out, it's going to be a nice gray color, and that would be kind of cool to have a gray smooth bone elephant toenail. So that's my plan. I will probably do one more in Rit dye, and then try my luck at using some kind of leather dye for doing something else in the future. But probably just one more elephant toenail. I don't need a lot of them in a variety of colors, but if you are a person who's crazy about elephant toenails, the white smooth bone ones will be a way to go, but Rit dye might not be your optimum choice. You might want to try a leather dye instead. That's what I've been told by many people. Also, I know you can antique the bone by just soaking it in boiling tea. So that'll also work to dye your bone like an antique bone or like a brownish color. With that gone, stick around for some slides, and I'll call it a day with my elephant toenails. Thanks again for dropping by here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I'm Tobias. Kitty here's the production staff. We both want to thank you very much for dropping by and spending a little time with us. We really do appreciate it. And don't forget, if you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Kitty loves to hear that bell. Don't forget, thumbs up or that other nasty one there. And don't forget to leave a comment and share it with your friends. Kitty loves it when you share. Talk to you again soon. Right, Kitty?